Hello everyone, Sawadika, Namaste. Welcome to Environmental Technology NewsHour. This is a weekly program on environment technology which happens on every Tuesday, and this is managed by Technobase. I welcome you all for this episode for the Environment Technology NewsHour. Let me give you a quick introduction to the Technobase. This Environmental Technology NewsHour is managed and owned by Technobase. It is basically based in Thailand, established in 2005. We recognized as International Resource Center for Industries and Technologies. We focus on three pillars. One is on the education, professional education, and I think the business services and also the networking services. So we have three pillars for our services. When it comes to services, our services are pretty much global, and we organize the trade exhibitions, we offer training programs, conferences, we have webinars. Due to the COVID, we have started online activities just like today, and we have business networks, we have publications as well. We do have talent search service, recruitment process, and we offer knowledge test, assessment test, and we do also technical consulting and integrated marketing for the companies to promote products. And then this is a NewsHour, which is basically a weekly, a regular program on updating on the specific technology. We have rubber industry NewsHour, we have environment technology NewsHour, we have process industry NewsHour. So three different types of NewsHours we have. When it comes to the business focus, we cover two segments I can put together. One on the polymer industry, other one is a non-polymer. Polymer in sense on the rubber, plastics, polyurethane, adhesives and coatings. Non-polymer is the chemical engineering, energy environment, water and membrane technologies, filtration and separation, advanced materials, and process industries. So these are the focus of the Technobase. So that's why we have this environment technology NewsHour base, where we cover one segment of environment technology under Technobase. Okay. Let's get to today's episode number 4, and 26th April, and Environment Technology NewsHour. Today's episode, we have a very special topic and our expert. The topic is focusing on the e-waste challenges and business opportunities. This will be presented by Mr. Venkateshamurthy, shortly we call him the Venky. He is the Managing Director of Advanced Chemistry. He is based in Singapore. Let me give you a brief intro to Venky. He's a CEO of the Vance Group of companies. With passion and vision of India, he has set up a subsidiary in Bangalore, India's first integrated e-waste recycling company with all over India presence. He is widely recognized across the globe for his path-breaking and visionary contributions in e-waste management using modern and state-of-art technologies and approaches. We got more than 25, I think I'd say close to 30 years experience in this area, and well versed in the e-waste management. So let's welcome Mr. Venkateshamurthy. Let's call him Venky. Venky, welcome on board.
Thank you.
Can you open your send a request?
Can you see me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Is my slides visible?
Very good. Fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Prasad Rao. I'm very happy to be part of this Technobiz, and I'm also, professionally on the chemistry background. So your business model speaks quite well on the environmental technology. So I think today's topic, as you rightly mentioned, it is it's a green topic, and it is a global business topic. And I think the audience who are going to attend today would definitely able to see what is e-waste and what are the challenges we have in this global market and how this can be transformed into a business model. So I'm going to discuss a few issues in my presentations. Basically, on the global issues of the e-waste, and what are the challenges we have, and what are the impacts from the electronic waste recycling, and what are the key sustainable solutions, and how this can be considered or can be a business model for the aspirants. And finally, what are the key responsibilities which everyone holds? Basically, today's, after the industrial revolution, after the agricultural revolution, what we are witnessing globally is the IT revolution. The In the past, the nature used to threaten the man, but today the man is threatening the nature, be it any kind of pollutions, air pollutions or water pollution or the soil degradation. Somehow today what we are witnessing is the global warming, greenhouse gases, Minamata Bay, chemical disasters, nuclear disasters. I think all these are invented by the human beings. I think it's a high time for us to look back and see what we can able to contribute back to our mother nature, rather than exploiting more because of our greediness. So the key takeaway from our today's discussion: one, how important the regulations are. What is the key role the regulation can play to mitigate these electronic waste recycling issues or impacts to the environment? How can we transform? Because there are two different worlds today which we are going to discuss. One is more organized in the e-waste recycling. The other world is more on the under the development, where under the development of e-waste countries, we can see a lot of informal sectors which they do the recycling in a very primitive way. And we are going to see and discuss what are the invisible sectors recycling methods, how it causes to the environment loss of resources, and more importantly their own health and safety aspects. And the third key takeaway is on the technology part, how important the technology plays the role in recycling of electronic waste. And by putting the technology, regulations, and transforming the informal to the formal, what are the business opportunity? And finally, it's a shared responsibility. Unlike any other business model, where if you buy a car, it is for your own comfortness. But today, electronics, electrical equipments, be it a mobile phone, be it a laptop, be it a TV or refrigerator or washing machine, or anything you take, just look around your home or office, everything made up of electronics, electrical equipment. So it should be a shared responsibility, not just the manufacturers or the government agencies or the consumers. It should be a shared responsibility. So before I start the discussions, I would like to quickly introduce my company, which is a Vans Group of Companies. It's a Singapore-based company. So the core concept of this company is to bridge the gap among the all stakeholders with respect to the e-waste business. So we have the first company, Vans Chemistry Singapore. We provide the consultancy and the turnkey management. Basically, people who wants to set up the business in the electronic waste recycling, a complete life cycle journey of the e-waste recycling. We could act as a turnkey manager to set up the business for you. And secondly, we have e-waste engineering, which is advanced chemistry e-waste engineering, which is in India, whereby we fabricate the customized equipments, be it the shredding plant, be it the conveyors or whatsoever the plants required based on the country context and the customer's requirements. We design and fabricate our own equipment. And third is we have our own recycling company in India, which is Vans Chemistry PVT Limited, which is in Bangalore, whereby we do the electronic waste recycling, collections, IP protection, dismantling, segregations, enriching of all the resources, and put back to supply chain in environmental friendly way by complying with all the national and international regulations. So we do also have another subsidiary called Vans Technology, where we own the technology of complete e-waste recycling, precisely on the precious metal recovery and refining, especially gold, silver, platinum, palladium, rhodium, ruthenium. So we have about 30 years of experience in the precious metals area. And I basically, as a promoter, I comes with a professional qualification like MSc in industrial chemistry from MIT Manipal, MTech in process metallurgy from REC Surat Kalna, which is NIITK. And recently we launched another subsidiary of Vans group of companies called Vans IIEM, which is Vans International Institute of E-Waste Management. What we realized, the gap in the e-waste industry, and people, producers or recyclers, uh, have their own activities, but there's a big gap in terms of awareness. When we want the recycling companies to set up, people do not have a right knowledge, what kind of setup, what kind of global best practices, what kind of technology, and whether we want to employ some, the recycling company, the recycling technicians, the managers, or the business development managers, they do not have a necessary skills because no institutions are providing the e-waste knowledge as part of their academia or the skill development. So we launched this new institute just 2 months back. It's an international institute. I have given the website address. You all can look into that. So far we have done a few projects globally, more than 10 projects of setting up the big facilities of e-waste recycling, recovery of metals, be it base metals or precious metals, and most importantly, complying with all the national and international standards. In Singapore, about 2 to 3 plants, in Malaysia, in Taiwan, in US, in Iran, in Turkey, and of course in India. So we have more than 27 years of experience in the e-waste business, be it a plant, equipments, technology, license, and so on. So we are very strong in the global footprint in terms of understanding of the e-waste regulations, best practices, and so on. I also would like to put a point here. I sit as a vice chairman of SIRI, which is a Sustainable Electronic Recycling International USA, where we make a R2 certifications, responsible recycling certifications globally. Means to say most of the e-waste recyclers wants these R2 certifications so that they can work with all the big OEMs and multinational companies to ensure the traceability, accountability, IP protections all being certified as per the R2. I'm also one of the NRI award winner, and I sit on many international committees. So with that quick introduction, I would like to make a statement. E-waste is not a waste, but a valuable resource. If we recycle it in environmental friendly way and able to comply with all the standards. So in my opinion, we have been debating many times on this definition. It is not a waste, nothing but e-resource. Just take an example of a mobile phone. As long as you use this mobile phone, every part of this mobile phone is usable to us. The moment the functionally mobile phone is not working, we call it as a waste. It's wrong. In terms of recycling life, plastics can be recovered back, the glass can be recovered back, all the precious metals can be recovered back, likewise the base metal. So we should think that it is not an e-waste, nothing but an e-resource. So now we realize globally that to take, make, use, and throw doesn't work in the circular economy. So we had to take, we had to make, you have to use, if not extend the life and reuse it, if not repair and reuse it, instead of throwing. Throwing is not at all sustainable in the part of circular economy. That is what the discussion is going to be today. The scenario of the global e-waste. Globally, we generate about 57 million metric tons of electronic waste year on year, which is globally, and an average is about 4.1% growth, means year on year, which is almost 7 over kgs per capita globally. So unfortunately, only 15% is being recycled out of 57 million metric tons globally in a formal way. Unfortunately, about 85% is in the hands of invisible sectors. You can see like, they're compromising on the corporate social responsibility. They compromise on the extended producer responsibility, means they generate the high risk to the environment, to the health and safety, as well as loss of resources. Go for component harvesting by primitive methods, open burning to take out the copper. You can see the picture. They put into the chemical to take out the gold and all by leaching, and the end of the leaching, they throw all these effluents into the public river or the lake or ponds, so it will get enter into our ecosystem. And that's where in certain countries, certain area, the soil is so contaminated with all the lead, arsenic, antimony, and so on. Worst is landfill. There's so much of the resources are being landfill. It's a resource risk. We lose the resources. And still worst is in certain developing countries, child and women labors are involved, and they risk their life, which we are going to see anyway. So it is estimated that by 2030, it's about 75 million metric tons of e-waste going to be generated. And out of which the top, continents wise, Americas generate about 13 million metric tons, per capita is about 13.3 kgs, whereas Asia generate close to 25 million metric tons, 25 million metric tons, which is almost 5 to 6 kg per capita. And Europe generates about 12 million metric tons, and per capita is about 16.2 kg, whereas Australia, New Zealand is about 2.9, and Africa is about 0.7 million metric tons, per capita is about 2.5 kg. So if you talk about Asia, we generate almost 25 million metric tons. Unfortunately, only 11.7% is being recycled. The value of this e-waste is close to $44 billion. Just imagine 11.7% of the $44 billion is close to about 5 to 6 billion only is being recycled. The rest of, either is being stored in the warehouses, or mostly it is in the hands of informal sectors. They do the primitive methods, and at the end of the day, we lose the resources. There is a lot of harms to the environment because of the toxins and so on. So I don't go in detail, all these statistics are available, but I just to give an idea that, for example, in America, out of almost 1 billion inhabitants, average per capita is about 13.3 kgs, and Americas generate about 24.8% of the global e-waste, which is 57 million metric tons. Only 9.4% is being recorded, the collection rate out of 13.1 million metric tons, and 1.2 million metric tons is only recycled. So likewise, if you go on African countries, about 2.5 million metric tons, or 4.7% of the global average of e-waste generated, and only 0.9% is being collected and recycled. And if you talk about Europe, which is relatively very high collection rates because of the European V directive, and they are the in very advanced stage in terms of regulations, implementations, enforcement, technology, and good practices. They have a lot of national and international regulatory framework. They are the first one to implement it among the member states in Europe. So that's where you can see, though they generate about 23% of the global, and the recycling rate is close to about 42% out of 12 million metric tons. So Australia and New Zealand, which is again generating about 0.7 million metric tons, or 700,000 metric tons, in which only 8.8% is the collection rate, and about 60 metric tons is reported, 600 metric tons is reported to be collected and recycled, which is equivalent to about 1.3% of the global average. And the e-waste values, this is where, as I mentioned, the business opportunity. Out of 57 million metric tons, which is equivalent to about $81 billion, hardly about 12 to 15% is being coming to the formal recycling sector so far, which is hardly about, you can say, is about 12 to 13 billion dollars is being put into the economy of the respective country. The rest is not being accounted. Yeah. So what are the challenges we have globally? I'm not trying to say that regionally. It's a global challenge. Reason is like this simple. In my own analysis, the triple E products chemistry is the same. Whether it's a laptop made by the brand A or B or C, the chemistry of the laptop is the same. In the sense, plastics, metals. Among the metals may be ferrous, non-ferrous, precious metals, rare earth metals, and so on. Among the toxics, again the same, irrespective of the brand, arsenic or lead or mercury or antimony and so on is the same. But the problem is that we have a different boundaries across the globe. And if we recycle in a right way, the environmental benefits is the same. If we recycle in a primitive, traditional by the informal sectors, the impact is the same across the globe. If the impact from the mercury, whether it's in Americas or in Europe or in India or in Thailand, it should be the same, because mercury will not make the choice of, okay, is a rich country or poor country or whatever. If it is a chronic disease, from the mercury, irrespective of the boundary, it should be the same. Likewise, if you recycle in an environmental friendly way, if you can able to extract all the values, the commercial returns also the same. For example, if you are taking about precious metal like gold, silver, platinum, palladium, or rhodium, ruthenium, it's all being based on the London Bullion Metal Exchange rates. The gold price is the same, irrespective of whether it is in Asia or Europe or Americas. But unfortunately, the last point is the confusions. We have a lot of confusions in terms of e-waste regulations. Many countries put the regulations, unfortunately, no enforcement. Though the chemistry is the same, environmental impact is the same, commercial returns are the same, yet there are a lot of confusions. So what we try to always influence that, there should not be boundary for the regulations. If all the above 3 points are same, so there should be globally one guidelines. It should be mitigating all the issues, whether it's a positive values or whether it is a toxics management. It should be the same regulations which should withhold across the globe. So I just wanted to highlight the points that what are the global challenges. Let me just move my camera. So what are the global challenges we have? One is the lack of transparency in the product information. You take any products, I don't want to name whether it's a mobile phones or the laptops. The producers will give very little information about their products. Means to say, their idea is to put more and more products into the market, and their idea is to change the technology so that they could sell more and more. And also you can see that the shelf life today, we used to have the TV for 8 to 10 years. Probably we had to change in 3 to 4 years. We used to have the mobile phone, which was released early 2000. We used to carry mobile phone for 3 to 5 years. Probably today is about an year or 1.5 years. We had to change the mobile phone because new model comes in, hard to repair. There's no product informations to repair, and most importantly, there are no spare parts to repair the mobile phones. Likewise, any other gadgets, you take laptops or the iPods or iPads, it's all the same situations, because these product manufacturers will give little room for the product knowledge or the IP. They make tough for right to repair and so on. So growing number of polluters, because of the alarming rate the e-waste is is growing today, and especially the post-COVID, you can see that work from home or online educations or online medical consultancy, everything is being addressed by the electrical products. Even the online marketing, digital marketing, and all. So the e-waste growth is increasing almost in an alarming rate. It's also because of the technology is updating very fast. So the technology is phasing out and new technology coming into the market, And so why is a kind of use and throw situations today. And unfortunately, the recycling rate still, even though the IT revolution started in early 90s, even after 25, 30 years, we still see the recycling rate is only 15 to 20%, which is coming into the formal recycling. So lack of knowledge and the lack of putting into the right practices in the recycling and competency among the regulators, because the priorities are different in certain countries, developing countries, their priorities on the municipal solid waste. It's a big volume, but unfortunately, they don't understand the e-waste is more toxic, more chronic as compared to the general waste. So the priorities are not there, and they continue to exploit the natural resources, because more and more electronic products being manufactured and put onto the market, and more and more mining is happening. That means to say deforestation and exploitation of the natural resources. So climate change, which I have already mentioned, the global warming, the greenhouse gases, and there are so much of other diseases, which are witnessed by the mankind today. Yeah. So just give it, I think these pictures can speak many words for you all. You can see that people who are looking, I mean, sitting across the cables have no mask or the respirators, no gloves, probably nothing, no safety measures. These cables could be, made up of copper, maybe lead, maybe certain other toxic elements inside these electronic cables. So they doesn't aware of this. And second picture, you can see they're just burning of the cables without knowing there's a toxic fumes coming out, which are nothing but dioxins and furans, very cancer causing agents, dioxins and furans. They doesn't know that because they are not aware of this product, and they are just, for them it is a living. Unfortunately, we are in the world where majority of the e-waste in the hands of invisible informal sectors. For them it is a bread and butter, but I think the producers, recyclers, and the government agencies and all the shareholders or the stakeholders should take the responsibility how we can be able to transform this into the right way of recycling, by educating them, by equipping them with the necessary social security and health informations and so on. So once the environment or the health being damaged, it is almost, I would say, it's an irreparable damage to the environment, to the health, and most importantly to our mother nature. Again, I don't go details about all these data, which has been very well established across the globe, that what is the impact of from mercury, from the lead, from the arsenic, particulate matters, the dust particles, certain cities being proven to be the most polluted cities on the planet, and a lot of people are suffering by asthmatic skin problems, allergies, kidney issues, and so on. I think probably you can see that, for example, the lead causes reproductive systems damage, the kidney problems, the mercury is again the brain damage, kidney damage, likewise cadmium, the plastics, plastics, especially as I mentioned, dioxins, furans, and all causes the birth defects, liver cancer, liver damage, nerve damage systems, and so on. Again, you have seen that mobile phones today, post COVID still was, because the online education. So every small kids now by default they have to sit at home using the mobile phone. They need to connect to their schools and teachers. By default, they are exposed to a lot of radiations, and again, not just online class, then they addict to the games and so on. And it's again, it's a new issue coming out from this post-COVID problems, eyesight problems, and so on. So all these are man-made disasters, and we just think on one side of the angle. No doubt, the triple E product has given so much of comfort. If you look back during our agriculture and IT, our industrial revolution, we hardly, to connect to one country to another country, we use the landlines and so much difficulties. But today, by touch, we have so much of comfort. We could be able to connect to across the globe by just pressing the button, be it a WhatsApp call, be it a emails or whatsoever. And thanks to the technology in one way, but in the meantime, we never looked on the other side of the coin, which is the electronic waste. Once it ends its life, what all the impacts and all. Not just that, we are continuing to exploit these resources, and you all know that how important certain metals for our living, especially as long as we have this world, we need these metals like gold. If you continue to mine more, probably within another 20-30 years, we may run out of the gold resource from the mother nature or from the mining. Likewise silver, likewise copper. As we go for more and more industrialization, more and more infrastructure development, you can see that the copper is being almost 15 million metric tons copper per year. So we may run out of the copper in another 15 to 20 years, the way in which we are growing today. But I think without considering the rate of year-on-year increasing of the metal consumption. So the best is that we need to recycle. So what is the sustainable circular model in the EEE management? So one thing is we need to reduce the environmental footprint. Like we need to explore the green products, which is toxic free, lead free, arsenic free, mercury free, and these products also should be able to stand on a longer shelf life. What we are seeing is the shelf life, shorter shelf life. Every 1.5 to 2 years, we change the mobile phone, we buy the new mobile phone. Every 3-4 years, we change the TV because of the new model, or the existing TV may not be repairable. The cost of repair will be more than we buy the new one. So I think we need to change the consumer behavior of reuse. We need to encourage to reuse the electronic products. If I cannot use, I have to think that how I can donate to someone who is less privileged to use the same mobile phone or the TV or refrigerator and so on. So I think by which we can able to increase the resource life. Then again, the material conservation or saving of the material, because right now we do not aware that what all the impacts of the electronic waste. So everything we dumped in a dustbin or in the trash bags, so we just send it for incineration, and or it ends up in a landfill. So in either case, we are wasting a lot of resources. As we already said that e-waste is not a waste, nothing but a great resource, because you take anything which has got plastics and metals, and of course some glass, maybe all the metals can be recycled and recovered, put back to supply chain. So what we need to do, it's not that once the mobile phone is not working or laptop is not working, not that immediately we need to send it for recycling. We must see that value extension, whether we can able to repair. If cannot be repaired, whether we can able to salvage certain components and go for the refurbishment and remarketing. If nothing can work, instead of going for landfill or throwing, we should give it to the right recycling company, so that we can reduce the resource dependency, and more importantly, we can also contribute to reduce the carbon footprint, decarbonization targets or carbon footprint. Okay, let me give you an idea or the carbon footprint. See, in year 2021, the globe produced about 1.38 billion mobile phones. Each piece of mobile phones release about 19 kgs of carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, which is a global warming agent, greenhouse gas. So 1.38 billion of mobile phone pieces equivalent to 2.62 million tons of CO2 being generated or being released every year. If you recycle, we could save 80% of the CO2 released to the atmosphere. Means we only consume 20% of such carbon footprint, 80% can be saved. So I think the point here, we must encourage to recycle rather going for incineration, landfill. And most importantly, another important point is, instead of mining from the ground or from the mother earth, we should encourage go for urban mining or above the ground mining from the electronic waste. So reduce mining of virgin raw material, which reduces the greenhouse gases release, and also prevent the global warming, and which create more business, because anyway we are part and parcel of electrical products. We cannot live without mobile phone, without electrical products, because of our comfortness and because of the nature of our living is today we are so much of depends on the electrical products. The only way is that we need to find a way how to recycle in an environmental friendly way, so that we could able to make this as a business model in the right perspective, so which also indirectly boosts our economy. So what is required in order to be the circular economy concept? We need to hands together with all the stakeholders of our industry. The government agencies, they are the one actually framing the regulations, the policies and implementations and enforcement, which is equally important. There are countries we have a e-waste management rule, but unfortunately it's not being enforced. It's not being properly implemented, not being enforced. So still the informal activities continues. That's where you see globally only 15% is being coming to the formal recyclers. 85% is in the hands of informal sectors. Exports happens, though it is a toxic. Basel Convention restrict the exportation of the toxic materials, but still illegal exportation happens from the developed countries to the developing countries. So it is very important the government agencies to step forward with the right regulation and enforcement. Secondly, the generators or the producers, which is OEMs or any generator stockists or retailers and all, they need to take the responsibility, because they know better than the consumers. They know exactly their product, mobile phones or laptop or refrigerators, what kind of CFCs they use, what kind of toxic elements are in the mobile phone, what kind of valuable metals are in the mobile phone. Likewise, all products, they know the exact chemistry. So it's important the producers take the responsibility to get aware of the consumers, or let consumers aware how to repair or how to recycle, or they take back and put back to the recycling company. So likewise, institutions has to work together, because technology played a very important role. Unfortunately, institutions are not geared up in certain developing countries about e-waste technologies. We may not have a very heavy handled technology across the developing countries. So I think institutions, industries come forward to develop the localized technology to recycle the electronic waste. And again, the recyclers, because they have the responsibility to recycle in the right way and also put back to the recovered metals to the supply chain. And finally, the consumers, which is you and me, we need to see that whether we need to buy more phones, whether we can able to manage the same phone for few years. If we cannot, then if you buy the new phone, why can't we give this old phone to someone who can able to reuse it again? So I think consumers behavior also equally important to make the circular economy concept successful. So in our concept of technology plays the important role, just like regulations, just like the shareholders responsibility. In the entire life cycle, for example, once the at your home, for example, you decided to end life of the refrigerators or the cables or the remotes or the batteries or the mobile phones or laptops. So at your home there are so much electrical products. At a time you may have to say no to that. Then comes that you need to engage the right recycling company, where there is a business model to establish the reverse logistic, the transportation to the recycling company. And there are certain products, like example, your mobile phone may have certain data, like informations stored in the hard disk of mobile phone or in the laptop. So you need to make sure your data is being protected. It's called IP protection and data destruction. This is again another business model. It's a very big business model today globally, because the cloud computing, and big companies host the data and so on. Even the bank data, our personal credit card informations, every informations are being stored. So data protection is a very key element in the ITAD or asset disposition journey. And then we need to dismantle and categorization, whether we can able to, after dismantling, whether it can able to use back the certain components. If can, then we go for reuse, repair and refurbishment. If cannot, then it go for shredding and separation of various fractions of metals, non-metals. Among the metals, you can separate various ferrous and non-ferrous and precious metals, and go for recovery of non-ferrous like a copper. You can convert into copper cathodes. So one thing I want to say here, that once you recover, it's as pure as virgin material, especially the metals. There's no saying that the recycled metals are less inferior in terms of malleability, ductility, or any metallurgical properties. So it's as good as from the virgin material. Most importantly, you are saving the mother nature by doing the above ground mining, by recycling and recovering of the metals from the waste instead of going for the mining of the new metals. So recovery of resources and refining, of course, the sampling and analysis, and most importantly, you need to make sure certain pictures I shown how environmental friendly pollution controls are important to make sure all the recycling facilities are being complied with the set standards, be it a national standards or be it a international standards, be it ISO 14,000 or ISO 18,000, which is occupational health and safety management systems, or R2 responsible recycling for having a better traceability, accountability, IP protection and all, ERP enterprise resource management. And of course, today we are talking globally is about digitalization. Once the product is manufactured and released to the market, it has to capture the complete journey of this product until it comes back to the recycling and recycled back and put back to supply chain. So that's the kind of language is being discussed in Europe today, digitalization. They're also looking at the artificial intelligence to import into the recycling technology and so on. So just to give an idea how this technology, it's not, again, I would like to say it's not a rocket science. It's just that, you need to know what is the right technology for the right metal. E-waste is a complex, no doubt. It is a complex because it contains a lot of different metals and alloys, likewise different types of plastics and so on. It's not just having one shredding plant or one kind of technology can open all the locks. I used to say it's not that one key will open all the locks. So you need a different approach, which speaks more experience and so on. We are into this market for long. We know which shredder work for what kind of electronic waste, which techniques works for what kind of recovery and refining of the metal, so on. So these are all some of the plants which we have installed in our past companies, and globally the mechanical shredding plant, the mobile shredders, the dismantling line, the pollution control systems, CRT recycling, and so on. So as I mentioned, you can see that gold, which is the gold which we made out of the electronic waste, and we have recovered and refined tons of gold from the e-waste in Singapore from late 90s to till date, yeah, which is mostly coming out from various electronic product manufacturing rejects. So be it a gold or be it a platinum, be it a palladium, be it a silver, or various types of plastics, ABS, PE, PP, and so on, or rubber, or even the glasses, from the CRT monitors, and copper and ferrous, especially iron and stainless steel, and so on. So what is important is that you need a right knowledge partner to understand the chemistry and metallurgical aspects of this e-waste, and then you need to select the right green chemistry solutions. So our generators may be from the bulk consumers or original equipment manufacturers or end of life home appliances like refrigerators and all, or public institutions or banks or government offices. So once it comes to our chemistry of solutions, we choose the right chemistry of solution, technical solutions, and so that we could able to provide a right technology which is very much different from the traditional like open burning, which is toxic to the environment, very expensive way of our methods you need to put in place to detoxify. Say for example, let me tell you, if you go for incineration, you may be able to recover back only metals by burning only metals. What happens with the good plastics? You cannot recover back the plastic. So certain area pyrometallurgy may not be economically feasible. So that is where to treat that toxic fumes like dioxins and furans, you need to invest a lot of money onto the secondary combustion chamber, online monitoring systems, and so on. So if there are alternative methods to recover back the plastics without burning, then I think we should look at the green chemistry solutions. So again, today, a lot of negative public perception by incineration methods globally. So because you are wasting a lot of non-metallic resources and all. And again, lack of transparency. If you go for incineration, you don't have the metal accountability in the personal data, and efficiency is very poor, and pollution problems, high risk on the health and safety. So with all these primitive methods impacts, so we need to look at the right technology. So here I'm talking about opportunities. You be it any countries, for example, be it in India or Singapore or Malaysia or Thailand, Vietnam, Hong Kong, European countries. The first thing is we need to understand the ground reality, the facts and figures. How much e-waste is being generated. So for whatever we are referring on the numbers, it's based on the United Nations study, which is based on how much the electronic products put into the market based on the shelf life. They decide that this is equivalent coming out from the market year on a year. But in our practical experience, much more than that, the e-waste is coming out because of the changes in the technology, because of the purchase power is increasing, and people, especially the youths, they would like to see the most style and modern electronic gadgets today, unlike before. So I think we need to understand the reality on the ground, so that which will help us to make the right policy and help us to understand what is the right technologies required. And once we know that how much investment is going to be, whether it's you want to have a complete recycling facility or part of that, whether you want to set up only a reverse logistic or only IP protection or only dismantling and separations or only repair and remarketing, or you want to set up the entire facility. So the investment will be known only by making the right choice of the technology. So again, the regulations wise, it is important to have a stringent regulation. And again, is the informal sectors, which are by default is there in most of the developing countries, and we need to equip them with a proper PPE awareness programs, and protect their social security and provide necessary financial incentives along. So support to the recycling company to protect their investment, which is again the shareholders' responsibility. For example, the meaning of polluters pay principle. The generators today have to pay for certain recycling of their products under the new law called EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. Certain electronic scraps do not have a positive value, like CRT monitors or the lamps or the batteries may not have any positive value to recover back. So in those cases, the EPR, not just that recycling, even for the collection and put back to the recycling company, the extended producer responsibility protect the recycling fees for the recyclers. Then again, awareness. This is the biggest threat to the humankind today. People don't know why we need to recycle. As long as we use electronic products, be it a mobile phone or whatever, we enjoy using it. The moment it ends its life, we don't know why we should have to recycle. We always look for, I can sell to someone, I can get 10 bucks or 20 or 50, depends on the type of the product. This is what in our quick mind, we don't know. It's our responsibility. The moment we throw into the bins, trash bins, it may ends up in the landfill, or it may ends up in the incineration plant. We may be contributing a lot of greenhouse gases, which we are going to impact to our next generation. So awareness is very important. And this awareness creation, it should be the responsibility of all the stakeholders in the complete life cycle. So it should be a shared responsibility by the producers, consumers, recyclers, and the government agencies. So what the business opportunity? As I mentioned to you, there's a big business to be, made in the e-waste sectors. As the technology is, growing very fast, and products are phasing out very fast, means it's a kind of, every 1.5 years we change the mobile phone, we change every 2 years, 3 years we change the laptops, and so much, our occupational profession depends on the electronic products. So demand for the triple E products are increasing in an alarming rate. So there is an opportunity to do the business. And again, the demands for the metals in a certain countries, like example India. India imports almost 90% of the metals what they need for their domestic, purpose. Be it a copper, be it a gold. India consumes about 1,100 tons of gold, and 90% is being imported today because India don't have the gold mines. Likewise, many countries do not have a necessary metals as their, minerals. So I think when we have so much of e-waste above the ground, why we need to go for importation of the resources, and why we need to go for mining of these virgin material? So rather we encourage recycling, recover, and put back to our own product life cycle. So above ground mining is the way to protect our resources, not just protect our resources, and also protect our environment to our next generation. Otherwise, mining, as we have seen, there are n number of examples how serious threat of deep mining. One is deforestation, second is the safety aspects, and third is, you to make example the gold mines. Let me give an example. Like, the best mines may have about 10 to 15 grams of gold per 1 ton of mineral. Out of 1,000 kgs, you are extracting only 10 to 15 grams of gold. Remaining 99.9% you are putting back as a waste material. Whereas in any electronic scraps, if you take motherboards, 1 ton of motherboards, you have minimum 100 to 250 grams of gold. And not just gold alone, you have about 12 to 20% of the copper, and you have aluminum, you have iron and steel, and you have little bit palladium, and you have almost more than a kg of silver. So likewise, every electronic waste does have the metals and the plastics. So instead of mining of 10 grams out of 1 ton of mineral, we could do the above ground mining, whereby you can extract more metals, not just gold alone. The rest, all the metals can be extracted from the electronic scraps. So environmental regulations and global policy support is important. As I mentioned earlier, there should not be a boundary to make a different country, different policies. We always encourage to make globally one policy, just like a passport. It should be same, because the chemistry of the products is the same, because of the impact is the same across the globe, whether it is in America or Europe or India or Thailand. The impact from the mercury is the same, from the lead is the same, but we have a different regulations with a different priorities. That should be the same as what we always encourage. So by doing that, we benefits the environment, to our ecosystem. Of course, it is also equally important to talk about economy, and finally a circular economy. What I mean by circular economy is that, take, make, use, and throw is not sustainable. Take, make, use, don't throw. You try to reuse it. If cannot, you go for repair and remarket it. If cannot, recycle, recover the resource, and put back to supply chain. That's the entire life cycle of sustainability or circular economy. So finally, the success goes that, all the stakeholders should come together to understand the responsibility, respective responsibility, be it a producer, be it the, recyclers, be it the consumers, because majority of these are in the hands of general consumers. We need to aware of that, why we need to recycle, and be it the government agencies, those who make the policy and put the right policy and the right enforcement, and be it the recyclers, because they also need hold the responsibility of recycling in environmental friendly way, and also complying with all the national, international regulations. Apart from that, being efficient so that the resource will not be wasted. So, right legal framework and financial incentives, stricter licensing criteria so that not that anyone and everyone can come to the recycling industry unless otherwise they fulfill certain criteria of their technology, their understanding, their tools to recycle, and complying of all the standards, global best practices. So we also encourage the authorities who makes the policy need to understand the technical part of it, the competency of the government agencies, environmental agencies, and in some cases, public-private partnership. It may not be a single hand, a private investment can be feasible. So such cases, it's good to have a public-private partnership, and important that everyone needs to aware of the importance of recycling, importance of resource protection, and importance of safeguarding this planet for our next generation. So right environmental technology and all. So of course we are into this market for long, and we sit on many international committees. We understand the rule of the book in terms of recycling, recovery, and complying with the global best practices and so on. We have been in many TV channels to talk about the e-waste, refrigerator recycling, the batteries recycling, and all other mobile phones recycling and so on. So with that note, we are living under one planet, only one life. I think we need to hands together to protect our environment and resources for our greater tomorrow, most importantly to our next generation. So with that note, I just would like to conclude here, and back to Mr. Prasad Rao. If you have any questions, I would be very happy to interact. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Venky. Excellent presentation, really good. Actually, people, when whoever listen to it and they stop throwing their gadgets away, and they can look for how much gold is in there, how much valuable metal is in there. And fantastic, a really very informative presentation. I'm glad that I invited you, and you be part of this Environment Technology NewsHour. Let's get into some of the issues I'd like to pose for the additional information for the benefit of the audience, and also some questions received from the audience. Before we get into the details, I want to know, Venky, how did you get into electronics waste? When did you start it? You said 30 years ago. Can you go back to 30 years ago? You are doing, and at that time maybe that not that much important, right? Compared to the last 8, 9 years or 10 years, I think, so.
Yeah, Mr. Prasad, I'm basically a farmer's son. When we started farming, I see that a lot of pesticide, insecticide, which are being used by default, the fertilizers and so on. So I started realizing, we are polluting the rivers and polluting the environment, when I was 30 years back. Then fortunately, I did my MS in chemistry, and I used to teach environmental chemistry to the students in the university. I realized, how this application chemistry, or industrialization affecting to the environment and all. And followed by, I joined Hindustan Machine Tool to make the watches, where we use the, hefty quantity of gold, palladium to put it onto the cases, straps, and so on. And by default, whatever the rejects, we have to recover the precious metals. And again, we use a lot of chemicals and all. It has to be done in an environmental friendly way because it's a public sector. So that's where our motivation of, recovering of the precious metal. Fortunately, I think way back in 1998, I was offered a job as a project manager in Singapore. So same year, 98, I came to Singapore, and we started the first e-waste recycling plant in 1998. That time we were the first in Asia, except Japan, to start the integrated facilities to recycle the e-waste, and recover back the precious metal. And that's what the history, my journey about e-waste. Yeah.
So you start with, you know, the value of recovering the precious metals, and you finally end up into in Singapore and establish a van group. So can I ask you, what is a van? Is it any name in there, or vans? Is it? What
See,
is the name?
basically yeah, it's a good question actually. So vans is the objective of the vans is carrying a burden. You know, vans is in a vehicle which carry the burden. So that's how the name of vans. And again, the chemistry is the part of the activity which we do with the triple E products. You know, it's nothing but is a chemistry and metallurgy. If you want to recycle in an environmental friendly way, you need a full of chemistry, and also all triple E products made up of chemistry of elements and the compounds. That's how the Vans chemistry. And again, another is that, you know, it's my family name also. V stands for Venky, N stands for NewsHour. A stands for Anu, my wife, and S stands for Sunidhi. So that's how we align the name into both. Yeah.
So perfect. You know, you blended with the vehicle and also the family name. Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah.
Venky, you know, what do we understand about this waste, particularly, you know, electronic waste? It's a lot to do with the collection system. Okay, if you have a proper collection system, but people are lazy. People throw everything into their dustbins, into the trash bins, in homes, you know. And in your experience, you've been traveled all over the world. And which place in Asia? We're talking about Asian practices because all Asians think similar or behave similar. Most, right? Where are the good practices in terms of electronic waste collection? You know? Yeah.
So I think very first I would like to go on the, you know, the first country which implemented e-waste home appliance rule was Japan. Yeah. Way back in 2006, that was the time where we direct also came to the picture. That was the first country, and followed by Taiwan, which we call it as a EPA, Taiwan, which they have a kind of polluters pay principle, the EPA funds and all to incentivize to the recyclers and all. And to the extent I would say next, you know, Malaysia also quite good. And Singapore, we recently launched the new regulations of e-waste, which is a PRS scheme, producer responsibility scheme. But before that, Singapore, as you know, is a small and green country. We had a very strong land utilization, the labor law, as well as environmental health and safety law. So which used to cover, you know, collection of toxic industrial waste means you need a special license and you need a transport license, so that it's been addressed in certain regulations. I would say Singapore also managing very well. So Japan, Taiwan, followed by Malaysia, Singapore, now China also, since last, you know, China closed the boundary. The green fence law came into picture 2016 to 2017. Since then, you know, China also doing quite well. And I think Malaysia, we call as BOI, if I'm not wrong. Sorry, Thailand, it called as a BOI in Thailand regulations. So we were also part of those regulations earlier, early 2010 or so. I think Thailand also has a regulations. But I think, in my opinion, there are only certain countries have a strong regulations plus implementation and enforcement. The success always goes with the implementation and enforcement, where you cannot have a loopholes or a level playing field of informal sectors. But in some certain countries, it's a kind of bread and butter to the informal sector. So it's very difficult unless you transform them. You know, it's difficult to hurt their day-to-day living. That's a kind of situations in certain country, especially like India or some developing countries, Indonesia, you know, so on. Yeah.
You mentioned clearly that having regulations on the paper is easy, but implementing and enforcing them that is a reality. You know how how they perform in terms of the electronic waste. You know, when we look at the electronic waste recyclers, we also have in Thailand quite a few electronic waste recyclers. I understand that there's always a challenge to getting sufficient to run the business in profitable manner. You need to have a okay, you call it a raw material, right? You know, all the waste come to your plant. Is it a challenge, you know, to getting a sufficient waste come to the recycler plant? What's the situation like?
See, the
You have your
key,
own plant also, right? Yeah.
yeah, the key point, yeah, I think same situations in most of the countries. It's not just Thailand alone. Even in Europe, also same situations. Uh, is that unless otherwise all the shareholders or the stakeholders take the equal responsibility, till then there are level playing field. In the sense, informal sectors are making a quick money out of that. Yeah, so there should be strong regulatory systems that 100% end of life electronics should go to the recycling company. Then naturally the recyclers will have enough quantity. Now what's happening is, based on all the statistics globally, only 15% is being recycled in the formal recycling facility. 85% is not. So it means to say there are no stricter, stringent license criteria. There are no stringent enforcement. So still the informal activities are obviously seen in those countries. Except Europe, for example, Europe V directive, the success rates are about average 45% recycling rate. Certain countries are doing well, like the Finland, Germany, Switzerland, they're doing quite well. But certain countries, like Eastern Europe and all, not so well. So on an average, 45 to 50%, because there are a lot of illegal exports happens because they can make more money by exporting to India, China, or other Vietnam, and so on. They could potentially make more money, quick money, at the cost of environmental, impact, at the cost of IP protection, and so on. So I think that's the reason, as I mentioned repeatedly, we need to have a common guidelines across the globe, because I would like to repeat the same point. The chemistry is the same, the planet is the same, the impact is the same, whether it is an American or Asian, the health impact is the same. Why we have so many different standards? So we need to have a common guidelines, common enforcement, and in a right regulatory way to look into the things, so that the recyclers could able to protect their investment into the right technology, and they could able to get enough feedstock for the recycling. Yeah.
And there's one question here where they're talking about whether recyclers should work together with OEMs so that it minimize the impact, okay, in developing, particularly in developing countries like India. What is your insight on it?
See, this is what transformation happening in India. Like, we have this junction called PROs, producer responsibility organizations. So they go work with the OEMs to meet the EPR targets of the generators. But what is happening is that if the recyclers directly work with the OEMs is far better. But again, these producers also taking a little bit of advantage right now, because they have a kind of option in order to make a kind of commercial returns. If I give it to the recyclers, probably recyclers may pay only 10 rupees per kg, because he has a cost in recycling, in transportation, complying, documentation, so on. If I give it to someone which is so-called invisible sectors, probably I can get 25 rupees. So that is where I think the government is putting the stricter guidelines that the EPRs should be followed strictly. If there are any loopholes, their license will be revoked. So these are the changes that are happening. I think it's already in the discussion right now. Probably, this is a very primitive for me to say that in future in India, PRO may not be there. It's directly between the generators and the recyclers. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Can you talk about a little bit about importing of the waste? What are the current situation? If can you import electronic waste into Singapore?
See, there are two ways to import and export. Most of the countries, they have put the boundary not to import, not to export. Like India example, cannot be imported, not to be exported. Unlike otherwise, if the India do not have a facility, then the government will allow them to export for special purposes, like a refinery. India don't have the facility, so they give the licenses to the selected companies to export. Whereas in case of Singapore, we still have the import license, but this is subject under the Basel transboundary movements. One needs to comply with the transboundary movement regulations, whether it's whatever the category. And again, another important is the exporting country and importing country should take the special consent between them. And the importing country, say example, company A is applying the import license, company A should have the necessary facility to those imported metals to be recycled in Singapore, not to re-export. Yeah.
Okay. But is overall, it's not easy to import, is not easy to export this electronic waste. Yeah.
There are two reasons. Again, I would say because most of the country today, they look e-waste is a resource. They do not want their resources to be exported to the other economies, which was not the earlier cases. Now the boundaries are so strong. Recyclers put the lobby to the regulators that please do not allow the export, because recyclers as an investment they could do themselves rather than exporting to some other countries. So this, I think, in a long term, I would say every country look to put the boundary across so that the resources are not going to be exported.
So among these electronic waste, which gadgets are increasing compared to other gadgets? TVs. I think people don't even watch TVs anymore. It's everybody's on the handphones or iPads only, or those remotes. I don't think any. Those are gone. Which gadgets are increasing the electronic waste currently?
You see, if you go by volume or go by pieces, I think if you go by per piece, as I given one statistics, like in 2021, 1.38 billion pieces of mobile phones being sold, out of which close to 200 million is by Apple and close to 300 million is by Samsung, and the rest is other companies. There are tens of companies, mobile phones. That's the highest in numbers, but not by the weight, and highest in the value as well, because there are a lot of good metals inside the mobile phones, a lot of good precious metals, as well as the strategic metals are the rare earth metals in the mobile phones. Yeah, and followed by the laptops, which are very common gadgets for our professional life. Yeah. And if you are talking about by volume, then I would say home appliances like refrigerators, dishwashers, washing machines, air conditioners, and so on. Yeah.
And what is your opinion on public awareness on this electronic waste in Asia, and are they really see? I think that is a key, right? Public awareness, particularly the batteries, which are very toxic when you throw them into the garbage. So, can you talk about what is going on, in terms of what kind of actions the government is taking, public awareness related to the electronic waste management?
See, as such, let me just go back a little bit. As such, IT revolution started late 90s or mid 90s, I would say. When I came to Singapore, the first thing, the electronic gadgets was a pager.
Yes.
So the moment I get a message, I used to run to the STD booth, or so-called telephones. That's the time we started recycling. Yeah. And first few years, we never be respected because they think that we are a waste people. We manage the waste. Yeah. So that's the situation. uh, Still I see that there's a lot of room for the awareness. And an average, I would say, in Asia, only 10 to 15% respondents, they knows why we need to do the recycling. If we don't do recycling, what all the harms we create to the environment, our importance of our environment for our living as well as to our next generation. You just imagine, our greediness is so much alarming now. We exploit more than what we are supposed to. The metals demand has increased how many times? Example, the gold, when in late 90s, the gold price was only $300 per troy ounce. Today the gold price close to 2000 per troy ounce. How many times? Just imagine, the gold demand has increased. Yeah. Likewise, rhodium, for example, rhodium was hardly less than $1,000 per troy ounce, but rhodium price gone up to $30,000 $40,000 per troy ounce. Now it's around 15 to 20,000. 1 kg of rhodium, you're talking about, is close to more than $500,000. So it's all because why the demand in the automobile sectors, like if you talk about the cars, in early all the automobiles used to be the petrol without free of lead and all, lot of smoke. But now the global regulation speaks lead free petrol and so on. So the answer is catalytic converter, which has got 3 key platinum group metals, which is rhodium, palladium, and platinum. So that's how the demand for these PGMs has increased drastically in the global market. Likewise, the electronics demand in the medical industry, even in the automobile industry. Like, we used to drive the car, manual cars, but today the cars are nothing but it's electronics. Yeah. So the demand for all these metals has increased now. I think that's how, uh, but it's very sad to say the awareness is very poor. I think unless otherwise it starts from the home. Every home, we generate about 10 to 15 kg per capita. Look at our batteries. Every kids have a remote controlled cars, what not. And we don't know these batteries are made up of nickel cadmium, lead, or metal hydride batteries, so toxic in nature. And in the past, probably the newborn baby never used to see the clinic. But I think today, if you look at, within few days, they have to first see the doctor. Skin allergy, that is indoor pollution, rather to say. We create so much of indoor pollution, soaps, detergents, all these, electronic gadgets. We just keep. We don't know. We don't throw, because we have an emotional, sentimental value of these electronic products. We don't throw. We just put the drawer and keep the batteries inside. But it don't sit quietly, because these metals are always trying to go back to their original state, to the metal oxide. Like you keep an iron nail for a few days, it becomes iron oxide, because that is a stable state. Yeah. So that's how we create a lot of indoor pollution, which cause health impacts. Yeah.
And when these precious metals that what we you recover, when it comes to the cost, how much is variation with the original metals is almost.
Yeah, my calculation is only you have to put only 10% of your virgin metal recovery and refining. Simple example I given to you, like, in order to process 1 ton of mineral, which has got only 7 to 15 grams, good mines, maybe Australia or Canada, maybe 15, 20 grams. If you're talking about Asian, some of the mines like India, 6 grams per ton. So imagine 1000 kgs of mineral has to be taken out. You need to cut so much of trees. You are damaging the entire ecosystem. You need to have a heavy handled equipment to dig out this mineral. And to take out the 10 grams, you need to remove 99.9% of all the inert materials or impurities, so called. Right? You can imagine the cost to recover. Whereas in the electronic scrap, it's not just gold alone. You can do 95% mass balance. Like, the gold is there, silver is there, palladium is there, copper is there, iron is there, aluminum is there, the plastics also there. You can give a new life to all these by extracting and putting back to the supply chain. So that's where I think the sustainability as circular economy concept is, you can do the complete mass balance by recovering all these scraps into valuable resources. Yeah.
So it's like recovering is much cheaper than the producing the original metal, yeah, because if you look at life cycle assessment, so you have a program, e-waste institute. Can you talk more about it? What kind of services you are offering on that?
Yeah, we made this as intentionally to bridge the gap among the stakeholders. One of the key points you mentioned about awareness. I think still we are struggling with the awareness, lack of technology, lack of competent regulatory systems, lack of licensing criteria, and also lack of resources to recycle the material. A country like in India and all, such a big country, and in terms of the quantity of e-waste generated, India is the third in the list today, next to China and America. But yet we do not have, India do not have one single integrated recycling facility. We are exporting it. Yeah. Likewise, many other countries, I would say that. So I think it is the idea of launching the institute is to educate the stakeholders of the various industries, be it OEMs. They have the EHS managers, but they don't know why they need to manage the e-waste in a right way. They may not be knowing that, and they don't know what are the global best practices on the documentations of managing or the certifications. For example, ISO 1418 auto certifications, why it is necessary for the e-waste management. Okay. And secondly, resource development, rural empowerment. Today, the electrical products enter to the rural or village area. Everyone wants to have a refrigerators, washing machines, air conditioners, lamps, and so on. But unfortunately, they cannot carry their end of life to the urban facilities. So we wanted to empower the rural area. In the schools and colleges, we set up the small dismantling repair shops so that employment opportunities to the rural area. That's another area, another important point. And ultimately, I think by creating awareness, by equipping the necessary knowledge, we could bridge the gap of issues which is around the e-waste recycling, impact from the primitive methods, impact loss of resources, loss of health and safety aspects, and so on. That's the idea of launching this new institute.
It's
Thank you for
fantastic.
putting this. It is a first. In fact, probably we are the first in Asia. Probably dedicated institute of such. What we are talking is probably as a recyclers with our experience. Probably we are the first in the global market today.
Super. It's very, very important. I think they know
Yeah.
the awareness. I think, as I know, first techno is one of the foundation is education. I really believe in this. By educating people your right practices, we're talking about next generation. You can do anything good for next generation only if you are educate yourself better way and better practices. So
Yeah.
one point you mentioned about probably I take it to the last point to talk to you now, so it is already extended longer. Europe is, I think, in terms of recovery, in terms of collection, I think probably the best in whole electronic waste management. If you want to duplicate some of the practices in a pragmatic way, where Asia can practice or implement, what are the few practices that we can implement in Asia too, from the Europe?
See, I think is again good question, I would say, because we do not necessarily need to reinvent a new engine in terms of good practices. It's already in the practice in Europe. Say example, I would say batteries management. the key challenge in the batteries is that the fire threats. You need to have a proper transportation system. Yeah. uh, you know there is a policy to do the transportation or reverse logistic of the batteries, especially now you can see the EV batteries are getting geared up in the global market. Uh, electric cars and so on. So the batteries are taking a front stage right now, and likewise the recycling of batteries. But transportation is very important in the batteries, otherwise is a threat. That's one thing. And secondly, European Union or the V directive has included the majority of the triple E products in the list, where many countries not include. Even we are talking about US, many states not implemented the e-waste regulations. We don't have across the US a common regulations. Yeah. So only European Union have these common guidelines, and they have including the screwdrivers. As long as there is an electrical connection is there, no matter whatever is a hair dryer, the screwdrivers, whatsoever, they included under the V directive and the controlled triple E waste guidelines. I think these are the things which we can learn from the V directive and could be used for as a good practice, as a license criteria, as an right way of recycling, and the necessary compliances across the globe and so on. Yeah.
Is there any kind of society body or professional body among all the e-waste management companies similar to the ISWA, International Solid Waste Association, like ISWA focus on, of course, which includes electronic waste too. Yeah. So do you have anything like that in Asia or anywhere?
In Asia at this moment, we do not have any regulatory or associations to talk about. Say example, in Singapore, we have this WAMRAS, Waste Management and Recycling Association of Singapore, which talks mostly both municipal solid waste or general waste as well as the e-waste. Like in India, we have this some of the associations, but it's not being nationally recognized associations. One is that like MRAI, Metal Recycling Association of India, and I think that is another area where I'm also looking into that. Just like a V directive, we need association across Asia Pacific. Yeah, so that we could potentially bring the technology, the knowledge, and practices for the interest of all the users of the respective countries. Yeah,
because I think the waste amount is keep on increasing, particularly people use a lot of gadgets anyway. I think it's better to have a professional body which can become a good platform to exchange information, exchanging the understanding the policies or common policies or common guidelines for all, and so that it pass on to the governments to implement those ones. Venky, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to have you. Any final remarks to the audience?
No, I would, as I said earlier, I think be responsible, and wherever possible, do not buy more electronic products. Try to make use of the same until you could. If not, you try to give it to the next user so that they can use for some more time. Extend the lifespan so that we can equal amount of virgin metal can be saved, and equal amount of greenhouse gases can be saved. I think we have only one planet. No matter whatever, we have to live with this planet, and it's our responsibility to protect it. Unless otherwise, everyone thinks in a way that what we can give back. Nature has given everything for us. It has not. There is no complaint that hey, it's unfair that we don't have water, we don't have minerals. It has given everything for our basic needs. But unfortunately, we are exploiting more than what we want. I think that awareness comes to everyone's mind, we can minimize the purchase of electronic products and maximize the awareness so that next generation can still live happily from this. Thank you.
Thank you, Venky. Excellent. I think 2 words is live responsibly. Okay, so
Yes.
utilizing the resources efficiently, and Venky, thank you very much. Really a very informative presentation, and the discussion. I think you hit the many important points, and I'm sure that whoever is going to listening this presentation, viewing this presentation later on and watching it, they find it very useful. Thanks you once again. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much for the opportunity. Thank you. Good night to everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, that's the end of the presentation on the electronic waste challenges and business opportunities by Venky, Venkatesha Murthy, it's Managing Director of the Vans Chemistry. I'm hoping that you find it useful. And please check this whole presentation, whole session on our YouTube channel, Technobase, and so you find it, whenever you feel comfortable or convenient, watch it again. It's really informative, Venky. I'm glad that I have you in this program. I enjoyed this whole presentation and the discussion. Thanks once again.
Same here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Right. Guys, if you like to contact us, these are the contact information. You can reach out to us. Okay, and I'll see you next session, next episode. Okay. Thank you once again for joining this session today.